Good morning. My name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. Today is November 6th, Monday. I am so excited to be in Deerwood today and to be in this beautiful facility that we're going to hear more about it in a few minutes. As you all know, this is the Economic Development Committee, and this is the first time that the committee holds a work session outside the council chambers. I thought that it would be the right thing, as you know, we're talking about agrotourism, to hold this session in App County as it should be. And I'm very grateful to the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission for letting us use their property to hold this work session. We're here today with Council Member Balcon, who represents part of the Ag Reserve, alongside my dear colleague Don Lukey from District 7, who also, this is actually Don's district. There you go. And we also have Council Member Andrew Friedson, Vice President Andrew Friedson here. At some point, we're going to have the other two committee members join us. The way we're going to be proceeding today, we're going to have two panels, okay? One will be made out of government officials, and the rest will be people who actually do the work in the App County. So if I may please have Patrick Butler from the Planning Department here, Mike from the Office of Agricultural Services, Rachel Jones, Director of Government Relations from the Maryland Department of Agriculture, Kelly Grove, President and CEO of Visit Montgomery, and my dear friend Keith Miller, CEO of Montgomery County Revenue Authority, to please have a seat with us, alongside Marlene Malcolmson from the county staff. Marlene, the way we're going to be doing this is each one of the speakers will have 5 minutes, and we're going to hold questions. And after this panel, we're gonna have a round of questions from the committee, and then we'll welcome the next panel, and we'll do the same. Okay, Marlene, if you can please start your presentation, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you. I don't really have much to say by way of introduction because we've got 10 wonderful speakers here, and I just want to give them all the time to talk about what's going on. But what we ask them to focus on is share some of the successes they've seen and also some of the challenges so that the committee can think about what it might want to do going forward to help with those challenges. So I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you. For the record, Patrick Butler. I'm the Up-County Planning Chief with the Montgomery County Planning Department. Just wanted to, introduce myself. I've been with the Planning Department, I think, a little over 15 years. From 2010 to 2020, I actually worked in Mid-County, very much initially behind the scenes, supporting Jessica McVeary of Mid-County, who ended up helping to conclude the agritourism study. Along with various Mid-County staff. So before I got going, I really wanted to give a big thank you, a shout out to Jessica, the team, for helping the Office of Ag and the Agricultural Study Advisory Committee in concluding the study. So I know we have Jane Siegler and Bob Sissel, the chair and vice chair of the committee, and probably several other committee members in the audience. With the committee's permission, if we can have those people stand, I think they deserve to be acknowledged. Anyone who participated, please stand. Yeah, so thank you for that. They spent approximately 2 years, many hours actually in this room, I think often, putting together that study. So I really appreciate all the time and effort, expertise that was on that panel to help put this agritourism study together. The study was completed in December of 2019. We did provide the planning board a briefing of that study. Subsequent to that, the study was transmitted to the council, and then the pandemic unfolded. So, yeah, there was a period of time, obviously, where we were focused on the most immediate emergency needs of the county, but the work did not pause there. We've set up since then monthly coordination meetings that were occurring with the Office of Ag and DPS, then incorporated the planning department. We still meet monthly. Any initiatives that are brought to the Office of Ag are discussed at our monthly meeting. It's very much a collaborative environment between the three agencies. How can we help these individuals, these entities move forward with whatever proposal that they may have for their property, and try to make that as seamless and painless as possible. So we've really, I believe, fostered a very collaborative, very supportive partnership in this last 2 to 3 years to really try to make this more seamless and easier to attain. With that, I just want to say that there were several themes that the Agritourism Study Advisory Committee agreed upon, which allowed them to build 5 key goals for the study, and which resulted in over 30 key recommendations or a menu of potential solutions to attain those individual goals. And you'll see in the study that each of those potential solutions are tied to the various goals that they are intended to support. With that, there is clearly there's not like one agency or one particular group that the responsibilities for these goals and their achievement are relied upon. In many instances, it's going to take collaboration of multiple agencies and partnerships, both public and private, including public and private investment in that. And so I'm going to try to keep this to 5 minutes. Happy to answer more questions, but with that, I'll just say thank you again for the opportunity to speak and provide you a very brief briefing, and happy to continue in this conversation.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Mr. Butler. I will say that the agritourism report that you mentioned, I was on the planning board and I worked on it. One of the reasons why, and I'm not going to talk about it, I'm just going to mention it very quickly, I worked on a ZTA for overnight states that is going to be introduced tomorrow. That ZTA is actually, I was inspired by that work in the agritourism study. And that ZTA is going to be discussed in the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee because it's land use, it's not economic development, and we'll be discussing it in January. So that's what I'm going to say about it. Mr. Mike?
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming here today. This is quite an opportunity to host a committee work session here, so thank you. This is awesome. So for the record, Mike Scheffel, Director of Office of Agriculture. I took over for a person that everybody knows, Jeremy Chris, and I'd be remiss not to thank Jeremy for all his work, and he was a big part of the study. I think Patrick saw the passion that he had and really the passion from the farmers in the room, so thank you, everybody. Natalie asked that I give a little introduction of what this building is and where we are. So this is the Ag History Farm Park. This building opened in 1988. It is home to state, local, and federal employees. So the Office of Agriculture is here. We have Natalia Salazar, say hi. Jackie Arnold is somewhere around here. We have the Soil Conservation District working at this side of the hall. The Soil Conservation District is a political subdivision of the state. Began in 1945, so we have staff here from the Soil Conservation District. Raise your hand. In the back there, thank you, John. We also have University of Maryland Extension service staff here. So I saw Kelly here. Kelly Nichols, our senior ag agent. We have Catherine Savage, I see in the background. We also have the United States Department of Agriculture here with Natural Resource Conservation Service and the Farm Service Agency. So we got a lot of bureaucrats in the building. But more importantly, it's the one-stop shop for all things agriculture. So it's fitting that you hosted this work session here where all the ag folks are. So I wanted to piggyback what Patrick said. I'd say the key recommendation out of the ag tourism study was this partnership idea that a lot of folks who want to get into ag tourism don't know what they don't know. And the best way to help them is to convene a group of the experts from the government side. So these monthly meetings are a fantastic resource, not only to help the Office of Ag, but without help from Park and Planning, and I know there's DPS staff in the room, the farmers in the room couldn't do what they want to do without the expertise of that working group that we have. So there's been fantastic. Wade with some commentary here. That group truly wants to find a way to say yes. A lot of what we hear from folks who want to do anything in Montgomery County is that it's overregulated. So this group really tries to cut through all the bureaucracy and get these people who want to invest their time and money and talents into their ag tourism venues as a way to get to yes. I would say, in short, the ag reserve is working. That land use policy decision made in 1980, if that didn't happen, we wouldn't be here today. So as a policy, it's working. There's folks making tremendous investments into not only the farms, but creating jobs, creating opportunities for anybody to come enjoy what we all know is so special in the ag reserve. So I'm going to stop there because I could keep going and going and going, but thank you.
Thank you. And we appreciate that intro on the building and what's happening here, which is very unique. Ms. Rachel Jones?
So I'm Rachel Jones. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Maryland Department of Agriculture. Obviously, we regulate the agricultural industry across the entire state, and so our perspective is going to be a little bit different, I think, from some of the local perspective. But our goal and focus is making sure that every county understands that agritourism is the future of the agricultural industry. It is part of the future, and so it's not at all to diminish or take away from traditional farming, but I think what we've seen as a result of the pandemic is that there is a lack of processing across the state, lack of cold storage, meat processing, seafood processing. As a result, it requires the farmers to be able to do more on farm until we have more industrial centralized processing like there used to be at the turn of the 20th century. It's essential for the future of the industry, from what Secretary Addix and Governor Moore have heard across the state, that we be able to make sure that we support laws that are not so restrictive on the farmer that it prevents them from being able to enhance what they're already doing on the farm. And one of the things that we like to make sure that people know is when we talk to most farmers across the state, they will tell us it's not that they want to be doing more work. If they could maintain sustainable operations and continue business as is, then they wouldn't need to do so much value-added agriculture, pick your own operations and things like that. But the market demands and the, like I said, lack of processing across the state requires farmers to need to be able to do more on farm. And so this administration is very supportive of that. And so I look forward to sharing a little bit more.
Thank you so much. Mr. Keith Miller.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak here this morning. I really do appreciate it. For the record, Keith Miller, CEO of the Montgomery County Revenue Authority. I think as many people know in this room, the Revenue Authority has been operating golf courses in the Ag Reserve since the mid-1980s. Most recently, we operated and we have begun operations of the Crossvines, which is an event and wine production facility in Poolesville. Having served on the committee that contributed to the ag tourism study, I learned a lot about the delicate balance of expanded tourism in the reserve without losing the original vision of the reserve. There are so many good things, as you already heard here this morning, so many good things that have continued out of that study and the conversations that are going on and the partnerships and how we can work together. I think there is still a lot more to do and a lot more conversations like this, and I applaud the committee and for being here today and allowing everybody to speak. Ultimately, I think we need a comprehensive plan. I think we need to look at the Ag Reserve as a whole and understand that. The report talks about this a lot, and I think it's happening now. It's already continuing to happening, and you're seeing businesses and investment in the Ag Reserve happen on a more regular basis. Operating the Crossvines, we've learned a couple quick things that we have and we face as an operator, and I'm sure a lot of the other businesses in the room feel the same way. And those focus really challenges is the lack of available accommodations in the Ag Reserve. Access to workforce, and difficulty in navigating roads. Our recommendations would be to create some type of overnight accommodations, and I know there's a bill that is coming up in his ETA, But, where we look at it is that we have to design something that minimizes any negative impact on the farmland. We envision like charming bed and breakfast operations and establishments that integrate into the existing structures, blending in with the surrounding environment and preserving the purity of the farmland. Additionally, the creation of a road network. It's not, the rustic roads are very important to this area, and you have to maintain the overall integrity. However, I think when you look at the Ag Reserve as a whole, you have to have a way for people to navigate. You have to have a way for systems and people to get to where they need to be in the Ag Reserve and support all of these small businesses that are happening. In addition to that, you have to preserve all the historical nature in the Ag Reserve itself. So I think the final piece to that is if you develop this network, then you can create an opportunity for public transportation, which would give us and our employees an opportunity in transportation to get to the jobs that they need to out there. I'm excited to be here because I believe the Ag Reserve has provided so much to the community and the county, and I think it has so much more to offer. So I thank you for your time this morning and turn it over.
Thank you so much. Ms. Kelly. Good morning. Kelly Gruff. I'm the president and CEO of Visit Montgomery. For those who don't know our organization, our mission as a 501c6 is to market the county as a destination for visitors. And just people in the region and our own residents. I'm joined today by our marketing team, Letitia Engel, and a new employee who's going to be working on some community engagement initiatives with us, Joe Duran. So I did read through the study to remind myself about what we talked about in 2019. And most of where we're identified as a partner is in the marketing space, which we're really good at. We have to market the entire county, but the Ag Reserve is a gem for us. If you give us a product, we'll take it to the market and tell the story. I would say since the study, we had a pandemic, not long after. Previous staff member started the design of a Tastemakers Trail that launched literally 2 weeks before the pandemic in March of 2020. So we've picked that back up, and I have some brochures here today for those who aren't familiar with it. It really markets our wineries and breweries, and will be expanded into some other sites within the Ag Reserve. We provide financial support in marketing Heritage Days and the Farm Tour through advertising in like the Washington Post or iHeartRadio, Northern Virginia Magazine. We also have contracted with a truck that is wrapped with the Tastemakers Trail design and website that is going to be on a route from Baltimore to Philadelphia. So you might see it if you're on 95 headed northbound, but if not, we have great pictures. And then in the spring of 2024, something new for us that we've actually talked to the county executive about also is setting aside some funding to do some storytelling video with some of our farmers and other businesses in the agricultural reserve that can be used on our website and also used by the community. I would say in the future, I also agree about the accommodations piece of what is needed in the agricultural reserve so that people can have places to stay overnight other than our hotels. I think we need to talk in the future about signage. Whether it's signage on the roadways or a universal signage program at each of the businesses at their entrance, which is probably a lot easier than state signage or county signage, but something that's universal. We would also support, our organization would support, funding transportation during the Farm Tour or Heritage Day, so it could be helpful in getting people out of their cars and into more of like a passenger van. We've also been awarded an Economic Development Administration grant for rural branding. The contents of that grant will be used for focus groups where we'll have a facilitator help us talk to businesses and farmers in the Ag Reserve to find out what their needs are and how we can help. There's a component for research, funding for research, and then the last component is to develop a website and collateral materials. So what we need really is feedback from the community on helping us
direct the future of what we want to see, and we also want to make sure that we are sustainable in what we do in the future. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that presentation. At this point, I'm gonna open up questions for the committee and our guest. Please keep the questions brief. I'm gonna time you guys, just because we have our next panel and we must be out of here by 11:30. Some of us have committee session back in the actual chambers. We're gonna start with Councilmember Balcom.
Good morning, Marilyn Balcom, council member for District 2, which with my colleague Don Ludke, we share the Ag Reserve, and it's an honor to share the Ag Reserve. And as I told Natalie this morning when we came in, it's always beautiful in the Ag Reserve. So welcome, and thank you, Mike, and your staff for hosting us. This is great. I think the issue is all about balance. We just recently had economic forum put on by the Fair Access Committee in the town of Poolesville to talk about agritourism and the economy of the Ag Reserve. It was focused on the western side of the ag, but it really encompasses the ag. And the issue is balance, as Keith mentioned. How do we make sure that we have economic development in the agricultural industry from a tourism perspective? We always focus on the most critical aspect of making sure that we preserve the reserve for the next 40 years is to make sure that our farmers are economically viable, and we always remember that. I think agritourism is a way to help do that, always respecting the ag and the principles of why we established the agricultural reserve in the first place, and how do we look to the next 40 years to make sure that it's viable. So, I appreciate that nuance, the balance that we have to keep in this discussion. I think the study was great. It was the first time that I saw the study coming on as a new council member, and when I read through the study, I kept thinking, okay, what's happened so far? I didn't even think about the timing of the study happening right before the pandemic. So one of the questions would be, would it be worthwhile to go back and not redo, because I think a lot of it is still so relevant, but to just kind of do a refresh of, are those recommendations still relevant? Which ones have been, which ones are currently working on? Or is there low-hanging fruit that we could tackle right away? And so what is the current status of implementation? I think, Mike, you mentioned that, or Patrick. I'm being informal, I should say, Mr. Schiffel and Mr. Butler.
Well, again, I appreciate the invite to speak here today, and you got me thinking the same thing as I was preparing for this presentation. So I'm going to say again that we did give the planning board a presentation on the study. We transmitted to the council. We were not ever, given the emergency status and things going on at the time, we were not able to present to the council. Now that we have momentum coming back, we're moving back, I'll say, to normal, and in quotes there, over the last year, we have been saying amongst ourselves, it's time to really start, moving these initiatives forward again, in addition to what we've already been doing. So with that, I would actually like to offer to formally present to the council and give you a presentation on the actual study itself. I mean, I gave you 2 minutes worth here, but I think it's worth going through with the council or the committee at a subsequent session, a presentation on the study, and we can update probably some of the information on the slides. We ended in 2017 in many instances. I believe we had more data come on in 2022, and so we could sort of augment or amend any of the data, at least the data points that went into the recommendations, and then give you an update on specific recommendation and goals, and which one we've made a lot of progress on, which ones that we still need to make more progress on, or really in many ways need to begin. So I think with that, we could probably prepare that for a future session and work together to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be great, because I think that when we look at, as Mr. Miller mentioned, a comprehensive plan, and of course working with Visit Montgomery, and what the budget implications are for that. Because I think that we're kind of in this wonderful moment where there's general agreement that we want to support agritourism, and specifically from the Economic Development Committee. And so I think that would be great moving forward. And then I just have one other question. I don't know if, Mike, you had anything that you want to say. From the state perspective, thank you. I hadn't thought about that. It would be really great for us to know if there are specific issues that we can press from the state. It looks like it could be a resource issue from a central processing. We're dealing with that a little bit inside Montgomery County from the aggregate facilities for our food banks, getting fresh food from our farms to our food banks. So we're dealing with it in a microcosm in Montgomery County. But are there specific things that Montgomery County can advocate for at the state level to help our farmers?
Yes. So I want to highlight two things specifically. The first is the MDA currently participates along with the Maryland Department of Emergency Management in the Food Systems Resiliency Council. And so we've been meeting all year long. We've been talking about recommendations that two of the state legislators that sit on that council, one of them is your very own delegate, Laura Charkoudian from here in Montgomery County. And again, as I mentioned, there's a lack of cold storage. They are proposing, the council has proposed a recommendation for legislation that she sponsor that would provide state funding for more cold storage facilities across the state. That would help with food banks. Now, when we talk to farm operators, we just visited a farm last week in Baltimore County where they were using an old shipping container as cold storage on farm, but it was a very small unit. And we talked about what it would look like if farmers in every county were able to have a unit like that on farm. That means they would be able to store sweet potatoes and other crops for a much longer period of time, to be able to have it stable enough to be able to donate to food banks and to nonprofit organizations who are in need. But a farmer who cannot afford, who doesn't get grants, or just simply cannot afford to put out that cost on their own for cold storage, often loses that crop, right? If there's no market for it, if they can't sell it, if they can't donate it before it rots, it's a loss. So it's a loss in the entire ecosystem of the economy for that jurisdiction. And so that's one of the things that we're working on farm. I'm supposed to say this differently. Organic recycling. I'm trying to train myself instead of on-farm composting to say on-farm organic recycling. That was another recommendation of the committee that we are partnering with the Maryland Department of Environment to figure out how we come up with state regulations that would make it more feasible for more farm operators to be able to do that, and also other facilities. So funding for those types of processing or organic recycling. Sorry, I'm trying to train myself to say that at landfills or other existing facilities that may be county or state owned or operated, where we could bring in those types of facilities to help with the food ecosystem. And the second thing I wanted to mention is that we are currently the Department of Ag, Department of Health, and the Department of Environment in a interagency agritourism work group, where we are looking at the things that we've heard from people here in Montgomery and in other counties about how difficult the process is with permitting from the health department, which even though you have your local health department here, it's still, they're state employees, it's a state agency, and sometimes the permitting process is just not as smooth as it should be between environment and health. And so we're partnering with them to create sort of an FAQ, a guide, something that would streamline the process for on-farm operators or farmers who are looking to expand into agritourism. So a flow chart that says, hey, if you're looking to start an on-farm distillery or winery or a pick-your-own strawberry operation, here are the steps you would need to take. And so we're working to streamline that process with those agencies on the state level. And so one of the things you could do is support those initiatives, write to the Department of Health and Department of Environment and say, this is something you would be supportive of. The existing process is too tedious, too strenuous. Often there's inconsistency. We want counties to have the ability to change your zoning ordinances as you please. We don't want to take away that authority. But what we want is a more streamlined process on the state level so that if a local health department in Carroll County says it's okay, the local health department here in Montgomery County wouldn't prohibit farmers from doing the same thing. So that's what we're working on the state level.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jones. You said a lot of wonderful things. And I'm going to point out two things very quickly. One, I represent the Montgomery County Council at the Washington government, the COG organization under the Chesapeake Bay Clean Water and Resources. And because of that, I held a meeting up county with a Countryside Alliance, and Council Vice President Andrew Friedson was there with me, and we talked exactly about that, having facilities for meat processing in that need. And I know Council Vice President Friedson will probably follow up with his questions on that particular point. And before I hand over the mic to Council Member Sales, I do want to point out, as you may know, the Economic Development Committee has 4 members, and you're missing one wonderful one, and that's Council President Evan Glass. He's right now with the County Executive in an International Economic Development Mission, and that's why he's not here. Otherwise, he will be here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you everyone for being here. It's always a pleasure to get out of Rockville and have meetings in the community, especially in the Ag Reserve, to talk about such an important topic. I think about the Ag Reserve, and when I was on the campaign trail and going around the county to all of the different farmers markets throughout the county, as an at-large council member, it's heartening to see actual farmers from the Ag Reserve at these farmers markets. A lot of the farmers were from Virginia or Pennsylvania, and so I'm not sure how these farmers markets are being operated. I know some are private entities, and how we can ensure that our farmers here can get first dibs on spaces there, or we can raise more awareness about how they can have space at these farmers markets that are all throughout the county. And so when I was looking through this study and thinking about the neighboring regions, Virginia and Loudoun County in the comparative analysis, I think about wine country. When people talk about we're going to the winery, I want them to say we're going to Montgomery County's wine county, because we have this tastemakers tour, this tastemakers trail. I'm just wondering, when compared with Virginia, it seems that Loudoun County is outpacing us when it comes to farms that offer agritourism and recreational activities. Do we know some of the similar things that they're doing there that have led to their increase, and how we can adopt similar strategies? Are we looking outside of the DMV and California to see, like, what are they offering there to make sure that we are on the forefront, ready to implement those things immediately? I don't know if...
We actually had my counterpart from Loudoun County present to our board of directors last spring on this particular topic. So we're competitors, but we love sharing information. I am a big fan of the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky. Have been on the trail 3-4 times. So I learned a lot from doing that. I've also been to Napa Valley, and I think one of the things that we should think about in the future is keeping cars off the road and offering passenger small vans to keep people together, similar to what they do in Kentucky and also Napa Valley. I think it's a sustainable way to take people to these sites that we have, yet bring more tourism to the county. It's a great experience. You don't know anyone when you first start the tour, and by about the second stop, you have new friends from all over the country. So it's a really good experience. So I think we should think about that in the future.
Thank you. I know that the Ag Reserve generates almost $300 million annually, and equestrian activities are probably the largest generator. Do we have any idea what the population, the demographics of some of the visitors that come from outside of Montgomery County, and how we are evaluating that information or tracking the visitors that come from outside of our county to visit the Ag Reserve?
It's a great question. So we know that we welcome 9 million visitors a year to the county. There's a study that is completed every year with tourism economics. So we know there are 9 million people coming. Some are day trip visitors, some are overnight visitors. More day trip now than overnight. A lot of that is because of the change after the pandemic on the business travel and groups and meetings market. For data, we just in September subscribed under tourism economics with a group called Symphony, and it'll be a platform to share all of the data that we have coming in to our organization, whether it's lodging data or visitor data. As part of that process, we've also contracted to get near location data, which geofences particular areas, specific areas within the county, and we have geofenced some areas within the Ag Reserve to get a better understanding of who the visitor is. Because that is the one place we are lacking. We know people are coming, we know what they're spending in an aggregate way, but we don't have the data broken down by areas of the county. So we're hoping that information will help us, but also help you.
Last question is just about, I know that Ms. Jones mentioned that there's a lot of multi-agency efforts to improve the agritourism industry. I see that MDOT was referenced many times. Can you explain how transportation needs, housing, or not housing, but maybe accommodations are being evaluated when accessing the Ag Reserve, and how we're accommodating more, thinking about accommodating more people who want to spend overnight visits in the Ag Reserve?
Sure. So 2 things. So one of our challenges with MDOT is, as was mentioned earlier, signage. And even though from the state perspective, we may have a little difference of opinion, what we're finding is the State Highway Administration through MDOT has told us that because of federal scenic byway laws, that there are certain main thoroughfares or highways where you just cannot put signage, and that's across the state. And some farmers who live a little bit or have a farm a little bit off the beaten path, it's not on a main highway, would prefer to have signage on a main highway where there's more traffic that would direct people and say, hey, in 5 miles, make a left on this street, so that people who otherwise wouldn't know that this operation is there get a little bit of extra, there's an extra marketing opportunity there by having signage on a state highway. That's a challenge that we've been trying to navigate with the State Highway Administration, and so far a little bit unsuccessfully, because again, they're deferring to federal law, but we've seen in other counties where local ordinances have carved out exceptions for certain parts of the highway, and there's even a state law that specifically says for that federal scenic byway funding, in order to get it, that I don't know how, but Calvert and St. Mary's counties are exempted from that. And so perhaps that's something that Montgomery County could look into, is trying to figure out if you could be included in that exemption in the state to be able to put more signage on scenic byways.
Thank you so much for that. And I know that the president of the Maryland Farm Bureau just did a well-written op-ed about the 2023 Farm Bill. Is there anything that we can do as a local entity, as an ag reserve here, that we should be doing in partnership with our farmers here to advocate for that bill?
Absolutely.
I yield. Thank you.
I'd say your Montgomery County Farm Bureau and Mike are going to be able to point you in the right direction with what farmers want to see in the Farm Bill. I know that back in March, and since then, the MDA, Secretary Adams and I have had subsequent meetings with both the Moore Miller administration and with our federal congressional delegation to talk about what we want to see in the Farm Bill. We asked, of course, for funding for processing. For blue catfish, we asked for a carve-out and an exemption. If you're not aware, the blue catfish is an invasive species that is currently eating up pretty much everything that's in the Chesapeake Bay, consuming it. And that means less crabs, less rockfish and oysters and everything. So all of the efforts to clean up the Chesapeake Bay and all of the regulations that farmers are adhering to try to minimize their contribution or nutrients that might run off into the bay, all of that is being backtracked by the blue catfish. And so we've asked for, one of the major things is funding for processing and marketing of blue catfish. There are separate laws for processing blue catfish. It requires that you bring in a USDA inspector, and so a seafood processing facility would have to shut down their entire operation, anything else they're processing that day, in order to allow a USDA inspector to come in and be able to process specifically blue catfish that comes from the Chesapeake Bay. So it has to be profitable for watermen to be able to do that. And there are other things like expanded funding for some of the resource conservation programs that Mike can point you in the direction of. So there's the RCPP and EQIP, but just different programs that give farmers, a benefit or funding for utilizing best management practices on their farm.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that great response. At some point, just because of lack of time, I would like to talk to you about composting toilets. I believe that's a state issue, and I want to know how we can figure it out to make sure that they're allowed in Montgomery County. So if okay. Councilmember Lutke.
Thank you. And I want to follow up my ask for the work with our federal partners. The blue catfish might be the target right now, but as we know, it's hard to legislate to catch up with the next thing that comes down the pike. So my request is that everybody put their thinking caps on to make sure that the language is agile enough to be adaptable to other things that are going to produce a threat to the bay moving forward. And also wanted to take a moment to give a shout out. So the other state representative on the food, I used to be counsel to the Food Systems Resiliency Council at the state. It was a great learning experience, but the other member of the General Assembly on that council is Senator Katie Fry Hester, who now represents part of the Agricultural Reserve here in Montgomery County as well. She shares part of Councilmember Balcom and my districts. With respect to the study and its timing and where it landed, and the lessons that we have learned in terms of outdoor recreation, period, from the pandemic, because we had a very substantial increase in utilization of our state parks during that time, right? And correspondingly also with our local parks. But I know the state does have data related to the uptick in usage of the state park system during that time. I also know, just from trying to plan a office picnic for the Attorney General's office way back when, that there wasn't public transportation to any of the state parks. Kind of one of the problems, in that you can't always get people there in the ways that you want. We have that same issue here with our local transit and the agritourism that already exists within the ag reserve. We don't have transit that stops there. And so I'm listening to the different ideas and talking about the Bourbon Trail and Napa Valley, and I'm thinking about, my own travels in Niagara-on-the-Lake, which is a place I love, but also doesn't have public transit.
there's a lot of cycling up there, and a lot of people do go and stay there, and there are places to stay, the other critical piece of this. And so when you're talking about public transit or shuttle vans that can take people places, they're starting and emanating from somewhere. And in many of these places, they are starting and emanating at lodging, which we don't have. And so I wanted to know, Kelly, if you could speak to that a little bit, like how that plays into your analysis and what might work, or what ideas you guys are kicking around for how to make that possible to better serve our more rural areas.
I think ideally we'd like to pilot some tours and get feedback from the attendees on the tour, you know, what works, what doesn't work. It can be expensive, but I think it would be really the best research we could implement would be just doing a couple test tours. In the end, ideally what you want is for someone in the private sector to say, hey, this can make me money, and figure out how to do that and find a private sector partner. That would be the best case scenario. There are a lot of tour companies in Napa Valley, a lot of tour companies in Kentucky, and Mint Julep comes to mind that I used, and they're really well done, and they're not large motor coaches. They're reasonably sized passenger vans. So.
And then I noticed, and so my head started going, where have I seen the signs? Where are the signs? On Route 70, there are signs for wineries in Carroll and Frederick counties. And so we need some signs, even if they're up there, that tell you how to, this is the roadway you're going to exit off of, because frankly, that stretch of 70 that comes right through the 4 counties that meet there in my district, and along with Frederick, Howard, and Carroll, that's a great spot to put some signs to say, this is where you want to get off, this is where you want to come and take advantage of this stuff here. So, and I think we do have, and I'm hi Chris Miller in the back, but knowing, for example, their story at Lone Oak with them getting their permits to open right as the universe shut down, right? And how they adapted and made that business work and launch during that time. I think those are the things I think we should be looking at in terms of what adaptations worked and how that's played out longer term as the world got, quote unquote, back to normal. What is our new normal? Because it's not what it was before. And I do think and feel, especially when I drive around out there, that folks have truly embraced and engaged with that type of business model, and prefer it and enjoy it. And so how do we do more of it to make it better economically here in the county? So thank you.
Vice President Fritzen.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for putting this on. It's great to be here. It's always great to be in Rockville. I just want to say that. Everyone says it's great not to be in Rockville. It's great to be in Rockville too, but it's great to be here in the Ag Reserve. And as everyone knows, I had the privilege of being able to represent a pretty substantial part of the Agricultural Reserve for the first 4 years of the council. My heart has not left the Ag Reserve, even though my district has left the Ag Reserve. So I just, a few points, and I really appreciate all the presentations. One, I wanted to mention on-site organic recycling. Is that, okay. We had what used to be called farm composting zoning text amendment that I worked on with Councilmember Glass at the time a few years ago, working with our farmers, and so I think we've been moving in that direction. There's more work to do, so if there are ways to build on what we have been doing, I think we'd love to work together on that. It's a key piece of that effort and our zero waste goals, and obviously it's a boon to our farm producers, which is a win-win-win. I also serve on a COG, Council of Governments Committee on the Farm Committee. I've been working a lot on related issues here, and one of the things that we've been working a lot on, as you were mentioning, is the food aggregation facility. We absolutely need that, and the grape crushing facility that Keith Miller was talking about earlier is really the model here, to say, okay, not every farmer, particularly that are smaller scale, are going to be able to invest in that type of facility. But if we can provide a facility to, a number of them, then we can, really create that opportunity. It's been a huge success, particularly for emerging and newer and smaller farmers. So, that should be the role of government, and I think we really have an opportunity there. I've been working with Delegate Charkoudian and Heather Bruskin and others on that. I had suggested at one point that we should take some of our food dollars from the federal money that we received. Ultimately we decided to go in a different direction because the current food needs are just so great, which I think was a reasonable approach. But we need a state partnership on that, absolutely. The county is not going to be able to do it. But what we have realized is that it is not just a supply issue, it's also a demand issue. And so we actually have to both help with supply, but also induce demand. And that is actually the much harder part of it, but there are models to do it, working with large institutions, hospitals, community colleges, et cetera, where I think the state and the county could be creating that demand. So could you talk a little bit about any thoughts or ideas you have there of how the state can help us with, hopefully millions or tens of millions of dollars to get that done?
Sure. So again, supporting our farm operators is a huge priority for this administration and for Secretary Addix. One of the things that I like to use as a really excellent model in the state is really Crossroads Farmers Market in Tacoma Park. What they've done there is created a model that is sustainable for both the farm producer and for the folks who are coming, who are food insecure or most in need of food. What they do at that farmers market is they double the benefit. They're, I think, the first in the nation to be able to double SNAP benefits for low-income families who need it, and they're still able to pay the farm operators who participate there top dollar for their produce. And so it's a really, really just wonderful model that we'd love to see implemented across the state. As a matter of fact, we recently hired the coordinator of that farmers market. So she's now in our marketing department at the Maryland Department of Ag, and we're looking to have her assist us with helping folks. So all throughout Montgomery County, what we need is, in order for the food ecosystem to work well and to reduce that demand and increase supply, like you said, is it has to work for the farmer. It has to be equally as profitable for the farmer as it is beneficial to those who are receiving the food, because they've got to be able to feed their families as well. And so partnerships with hospitals, local government, schools, anything that you as a council, any regulations you can pass or your economic development department can work on that helps create partnerships that are farm to school, farm to your local hospital, farm to whatever institutions and businesses you have here, strengthening those relationships and making it profitable for the farm operators is going to help fill that gap, because they've got to be able to make their bottom line as well and be able to keep the lights on and keep their operation running, in addition to trying to feed people. They're growing the food, but they've also got to be able to feed their families too. And so that's part of the gap that we have to close, is making sure that we have a market that understands the value of the crops, the hard work that goes into it, and what's being grown, and making sure that the farmer is able to get, reasonable price for their crops, in addition to solving the food insecurity issue.
I appreciate that. And Linda Lewis is here and can speak a lot to this. And we talked about Pick Your Own earlier. The Butlers are here, and others as well, who are really doing this well. And we have done a considerable amount of that. The Farm to Food Bank program that we have done, which has been successful, the Capacity Grants program that has been successful. But if we're going to scale this and make it continuous, we need the state to be a major, ongoing, consistent investor. So that's really the key point that I want to make there. And then the last piece on transportation, and I appreciate that Ms. Groff mentioned this. I don't know of any place that is rural that has consistent public transportation that is part of the tourism industry. So, I would love to find a way that we could do that, but I that would be on the bleeding edge, perhaps, even more than the cutting edge. But what other successful places do have is a thriving private transportation industry that does, what you heard about in the Bourbon Trail, Charlottesville, and their wine country. You can look online, and there are multiple companies that will do it. And so I think one of the areas perhaps for this committee to look into is how can we help to prop up that private industry to support other industries, because it could really be part of the private sector connective tissue to make some of these issues really pop and be able to sustain. So I thought I'd just raise that. Thank you.
Great point. Thank you so much for saying that. And before we move to the next panel, thank you all so much for being here today. And we're going to have, for sure, the agrotourism study scheduled in the Economic Development Committee in February, just because we're booked all the way until then. So, and I think what Councilmember Lutke said, making sure that we study what has been happening with different farmers in terms of adaptation the last couple of years. You guys should look into that before you present in front of us in February. So thank you so much again, and I would like to please welcome the next panel, very exciting one. I'm gonna ask please Mr. Tyler Butler, Ms. Chris Miller, Ms. Jane Ziegler, Robert Butts, and Jessica Snyder to please come in front of us. Welcome. We are going to give you all 5 minutes each. We're really interested in hearing, obviously, the great things that you're doing, but also the challenges that you're facing. That would be awesome if you can please talk about that. And we're going to start with Mr. Tyler Butler.
Okay. Yes, hello. Tyler Butler here, third generation farmer at Butler's Orchard. Good to see some faces that I recognize. The big thing is here, I am the third generation, and I came back to the family farm because my father, my grandparents, they showed me the opportunity that there was opportunity. There was a way to be successful, to raise a family, and to be profitable. And I think that's the key to this whole piece, right? We all love farms, we all love educating everybody, but we need to be profitable. And if we're not profitable, we're not gonna be there, okay? So what we need is that study, which is, I went through that last night. Wow, a great study. It needs to be looked at, it needs to be addressed, and we need to make sure that we really, really do give it its time. Because my father, along with many other in this room, spent a lot of time on that committee there. So with that said, I think the reason I'm also here is that my family embraced change. They came in to this area in 1950. They were not an agricultural family, and they weren't widely accepted in the agriculture community. So, but who's still there today, right? The family that's adopting and doing things like pick your own, agritourism, company picnics, things like that. So we are always, I don't do the bridezillas, the weddings anymore. I've done that. But you know what? Don't take that away from my family in the future, right? So that's what I'm thinking about for my kids and where we're going. All those 7 grandkids we got to deal with over there. So embracing change while still protecting the ag reserve, absolutely. A pro-business mentality, I think that's very important. We are a business. I wish I went to school for business. I went to school for horticulture and crop production. I'm realizing this time of year especially, I'm growing strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, apples, pumpkins, Christmas trees. But this time of year, I'm not only a pumpkin farmer, but I'm a donut farmer, okay? And I didn't really plan on being a donut farmer, but give people what they want. They come to the ag reserve, they want that apple cider donut, right? Okay, so I need to have that opportunity. Let me do that. And so I'm growing blackberries, red raspberries, black raspberries. All 3 of those brambles together, all of those combined, don't come close to my donut numbers. Okay, and that's sad, but that's okay. But I'm educating the customer. Customers have no idea what black raspberries are, right? You can make great jam and jelly. So educating the customer, absolutely. I'm in the apple orchard this past weekend. A young lady from DC was up there picking apples, and I was talking to her, and she had her baby strapped to her chest, and she says, "I'm just here for the experience." I said, "That's great. What size bag would you like to pick apples in?" "Oh, do I have to have a bag?" Right? So the times are changing. My grandmother would be like, everybody's picking pounds and pounds of apples to go and make jam and have through the winter, but she was there for the gram, okay, the Instagram. So I said, "Ma'am, please try to buy some apples from me, all right?" So, again, those challenges, right, we're experiencing, having admission to our farm, time ticketing, we have a great, huge population of humans that are coming to our area. How do we make sure that we address that in a nice, orderly way for our neighbors and our fellow farmers down the street? Okay, so I can go through my list of traffic and dust and noise and restrooms and signage. We used to have a sign on 270, but I think it's gone now. So let's try to get that back. So I also am representing Dock Waters Cidery, the first cidery in Montgomery County. My aunt and uncle started that business, and my brother, sister, and I now own that. And so I'm in the cidery world. I'm in the alcohol world. So I'm seeing it from a different perspective. I'm also seeing it from the perspective of somebody new coming into something like this. I'm very privileged to come back to a family business that's been here for 75 years. But now this cidery, I'm experiencing what it's like to be a new beginning business owner. And man, some challenges did I experience. The neighbors did not like having change with that nice soybean field that's been there for the last 30 years, right? We put in 20 acres of apples, 40 different varieties from all over the world. It should be celebrated. It should be amazing, but it wasn't. It was difficult. And the county was used as a tool to help kind of harass us as farmers. So I just think change is hard. But that cidery has been a blessing. We love it so much, and people are literally picking their apples and drinking their apples at the same time. It doesn't get any more local than that. And yes, with COVID, it came, and they came in droves, and it was great. So what I'll end with is, as we've got nutrient management certificates. We're FSMA, Food Safety Modernization Act certified. Pesticide applicator license I hold. I have a commercial kitchen because I need to sell those donuts. So I have a food manager certificate. I've got a beer and wine license. I have an H2A holder. I have immigrants from Mexico. I'm CPR certified. So all of this has to happen to be profitable in Montgomery County. And so our big pie chart, when we look at our pie chart every year, when we analyze our business, that sliver of pick your own and produce gets thinner and thinner, that agritourism grows, and that farm market where they're patronizing our business grows and grows. So just seeing that change and where it's going is so critical for my family and my generation. So with that, I'm good.
Thank you so much. Great comments. Mr. Chris Miller?
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm way less prepared than Tyler, so I'll probably talk a little bit shorter. But my name is Chris Miller. I'm born and raised in Montgomery County, third-generation farmer as well as Tyler. A little bit different story. We didn't inherit the operation in the way that Tyler did. We've taken so much inspiration from them. But we grew up on a small farm, and my brother and I got out of farming because it was not profitable. We didn't know how to make it work. We had the horses, the cows, the chickens, the dogs, all that growing up, and we loved that upbringing in Montgomery County. But as the urban sprawl kept creeping closer and closer to Durwood and Olney, that part of the county got developed. My grandfather ended up selling most of the farmland, which is now residences, and people need places to live. So that's the balance here in the county, is how can you give people a place to live, affordable housing, and maintain the history of agriculture. The way we did that was work with the previous county council right before the pandemic to be able to purchase the property in Olney where Lone Oak Farm is. My brother and I worked with the Office of Ag, Jeremy Chris, Mike Scheffel, so many people in this room today, and without the assistance of this office here, that would have never happened. Tens of thousands of people have enjoyed our beer that's with grain that's been grown on our farm and in this county because of this office here. So I just have to give credit where credit is due. And it is working. Government is working. This office is working. So please keep it here. Without this office, a lot of the farms in this county and the operations in this county would not exist. With that said, how can we face the challenges we're facing and continue to be profitable as Tyler? Because if we're not profitable, we're not going to survive. And also, how do we build in value-added agriculture at layers? So how can we help commodity farmers, which is the traditional farming in this county, integrate into our products? One way we're trying to do that is with malting. Malting is kind of the unsung hero of the alcohol production as far as beer and spirits is concerned. And it's kind of what the Revenue Authority is doing with their grape facility in Poolesville. But it's that middle link. You can't take barley from the field and make beer with it right away. It has to go through a process, a value-added process. And right now, we have a very small malt house at Lone Oak that we malt our own barley, but we can't even make enough for ourselves, let alone the other local breweries. There's a new malt house that I know of starting in Carroll County. They're not quite started yet, Bear Branch. So they might be a link for this. It's not our county, but it's a regional malt house where local farmers could potentially grow grains, then have them shipped not very far away and malted there, and then distributed to breweries here. But it has to be profitable. You can't buy grain here for 4 or 5 times the price of that from the Midwest. So there's a lot of economics behind that, and I don't have all the answers today, but I just want to shed light that there's an end consumer. We have 1.1 million people in this county that are willing to pay $6, $7, $8 a pint. And then how do we get the farmers into that? That's a question that I think needs to be talked about as these conversations are being had. As far as events and venues go, Tyler did say, that's a huge part of our business, something we never expected. And what comes with that are challenges of parking, managing the traffic, trying to get in and out of the property safely. And then also, one thing that Dawn mentioned is rideshare or public transit of some sort. We are, in our business, selling alcohol. We do have that in the back of our mind. How are people going to get on these roads and home safely? So that's a responsibility that we bear, but having good signage, traffic, parking, all that integrates into that piece. And I know that other operations are struggling with the parking question as well, because you don't want to take a field that's productive in farmland and put it into parking. So if people were able to get to our properties in groups, maybe not public transit, but somehow get people there in a way that they don't have to all come individually. We are selling, in essence, an experience. An experience is a huge thing in our economy. Tyler touched on it as well. Social media is a huge part of our business. People want to have the pretty backdrop, but they don't know the amount of work that goes into that. Making those fields productive, making them pretty, the taxes that are involved in that, the regulation that is involved in that, and all of that eats away at your bottom line. The county has done a very good job. ABS has worked with local alcohol producers to try to highlight us in their stores, which is much appreciated. I know ABS gets a lot of flack on kind of monopolizing the alcohol in this county, but they've done a really good job with us locally, so I do appreciate that. The last couple things I'll say is signage. There was a state program at one point when we first opened, and I know COVID threw this for a loop, where we could have gotten signage on the road. And we applied for that 3 or 4 different times. We even had Senator Zucker try to help us, and we never got a sign on the road. So a number of people have mentioned signage, but that would be a big thing for us, getting people off of Route 97 down 108 to us, and likewise these other operations, letting people know we're here and we exist. That's a big thing for us. And then the commercial kitchen, I'm going to have to talk to you about how you pulled that one off, because as far as I thought, I did not realize you could have a commercial kitchen on ag land. We're actually residentially zoned and taxed as a farm, treated as a farm, so it might be a little bit different. But food is a huge part of this. People want to come and experience the food that not only we're growing, but that will keep them here. And picking more apples or drinking an extra pint. So being able to navigate the bureaucracy around the food licensing and the health side of it would be very, very important to us, and could be a huge part of our business as well. So with that, I'll yield my time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Many of the issues that you mentioned also deal with land use, so I'm going to make a request to my colleague, Council Vice President Friedson, who's the chair of the PHP committee, which I'm also a member, to have a joint session for the agritourism and follow up with many of these issues. But okay, good. He said yes. Okay. Ms. Jane.
Thank you. My name is Jane Sigler, and I have a small horse farm in Laytonsville. But up until 12 years ago, I, with my husband and another partner, owned and operated a very large boarding and lesson barn in Ashton, which the county has actually just purchased and shut down the horse operation. But I think, I wasn't, that was 12 years ago. I haven't been involved in the business in 12 years, so I wasn't part of the negotiations, but I think there are pretty good reasons why the county did that. But generally, the horse industry side in Montgomery County is a very positive story. We had a very beneficial zoning change in 2004, which really clarified a lot of things and made it easy for horse operations to continue to operate. The pandemic was fabulous for us. Our business is absolutely booming. Most of the lesson barns have waiting lists. Most of the boarding barns have waiting lists. Maryland in general and Montgomery County in particular is a little bit unique, I think, as far as my own experience in Delmarva, in that there are a lot of lesson barns for people that don't own horses but want to get involved in horses, want to learn to ride. A lot of Virginia doesn't have as many, as far as I know. Delaware, Pennsylvania, they just aren't they're not there the way they are in Maryland and Montgomery County. And what that also means is that there's already in place a pretty consumer-focused infrastructure. The state licenses stables, any facility that offers services to the public, if it's boarding, lessons, trail riding, whatever, has to have a state license. And there are, as of last count, there are 109 state licensed facilities in Montgomery County. And the county itself also has a licensing program for stables, equestrian facilities. So that means that there's a lot of consumer protection already in place, and that there's a recognition that this is a public industry, a public-facing industry. So that's a very good thing. It's also a very environmentally friendly way to preserve land and also preserve open space with private dollars for the most part. And as a couple of the other people have said, I think a lot of marketing surveys recently have pointed out that people are interested in experiences much more than things these days, more than products. So, and there's a lot of opportunity there. I know that, for example, Waradaka, which has a brewery and is on a horse facility, has large competitions, and their brewery and tasting room overlooks the competition arenas. So there's a lot of opportunity for cross-fertilization there. And I know people that actually trail ride here to this facility, trailer their horses in, and then trail ride to Lone Oak. So there's a lot of opportunity for cross-fertilization there. There are some challenges that people have referred to, which is accessibility, especially for underserved populations. But we have some good news there, too, in that there are some public facilities like Wheaton Park Stables, Meadowbrook, Potomac Horse Center that are in relatively densely populated areas that do serve the community that way. Most of them have programs for disabled or therapeutic riding programs. Wheaton Park, at least, I know is accessible by public transportation. So these are really important county assets and should be preserved. And lastly, I'll just say that I'm going to read a quote here from the Equestrian Land Conservation Resource, which is a national organization. Land conserved for equine use is not only good for horses, owners, wildlife, the economy, and our environment, but it is good for the soul of every person who is fortunate enough to experience the land and the animals who live on it. So, thank you. I do have some data sheets for both the county and the state, which I'd be happy to share with you.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, and I love that you mentioned the equestrian facility in Wheaton. That's my district, and I love watching not just children, but the disabled community go and have this experience. Is key, is one of the reasons why Montgomery County is such a vibrant and welcoming place, you know, and another reason to be so proud of living here. So thank you. Yes, exactly. So thank you for that. So now we're gonna go to Mr. Robert Butts.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm Robert Butts. I, along with my three other brothers, are the owner of Windridge Vineyards. I'm a lifelong second-generation farmer here in Montgomery County, and my brothers and I still do commodity row crop farming, and that Windridge farm business is still alive and well and healthy. But 12 years ago, we planted our first grapevines as a way to sort of diversify farming operations, kind of have a look to the future. When I planted those first grapevines, I could not have imagined what would come out of them. And today, Windridge Vineyards is grown in ways that I couldn't imagine. One of the most striking things for me, and something that I'm honestly quite kind of a little bit proud of, is that, Windridge is going to pay almost $1 million in wages this year, right? And that is the type of dynamic that these types of businesses offer. And amongst those 40-odd employees that I'm going to pay those wages to, one of them is my daughter. My daughter's a college graduate, holds a double major in ECON and French. As you can imagine, with the job market, she's got a ton of opportunity ahead of her. She's currently working for me, and I'm not sure what her future is going to be, but I can honestly sit down with her at the kitchen table and have a legitimate conversation about paying her a wage that makes sense for her degree. And it's amazing. Other interesting about Windridge Vineyards, so you heard something mentioned about geofencing a little bit earlier. So we actually had our winery geofenced, and the amount of data you can get from that is creepy, but also kind of amazing. And in amongst that data, one of the things that really struck out to my mind is the majority of our customers are non-white. And let that sink in for a minute, right? Because if you go 30 minutes further west, south, or north to a farm winery, you're not going to find that, right? And it's because of the location of Montgomery County, right? Germantown, Gaithersburg, I pull a lot of customers from there. So it's not surprising that I get that, but I think it is also really nice. I have had so many wonderful conversations with people that know nothing about wine, know nothing about farming, came out to my place literally to watch a sunset, but hopefully left with a little bit more appreciation of what farming is. So anyway, that said, the business is hard, right? So in my particular case, my business is an amalgamation of agricultural, manufacturing, retail, and wholesale. Each of those business units in and of itself is probably not large enough to be sustainable, right? But if you combine them all together, then I now have a durable business. And that's important as it relates to regulation and some of the things that people have already talked about that I don't really need to go over, but our businesses, these individual enterprise units, are really quite small and quite fragile, and so it doesn't take too much to upset them. One of the, I won't belabor regulation because I think we talked about that a good bit, but one of the comments that really resonated with me from Ms. Jones was about the diversity of agriculture, especially commodity agriculture, right? Ag tourism does not exist in a vacuum. We have to have a diverse, robust commodity ag, livestock, equestrian industry in the ag reserve for it all to work. And so while I'm very proud of the ag tourism business that I own, I'm also equally proud as the commodity business that I own as well. My last comment would be marketing, right? So every one of us here, I think, can attest that we can't compete with a mass-produced product, right? Everything that we're selling is more expensive, and by nature, it then must be excellent. And so if our marketing could reflect that, right? I would like to hope for there's a day where people come to Montgomery County not as a tourism stop, but they come because they think my wine is worth it. Dockwater cider is worth it. That black raspberry, it's worth it, right? So anyway, with that, that's my comments.
Thank you so much, Mr. Butts. Something that you probably don't remember, but I was on the planning board when you came back in 2000 and, I don't know, it was before the pandemic. That's how I remember. And we gave you the approval, and then we had a tour. It's so wonderful to see you where you are today, grow this way. So thank you. We're honored to have you here. Ms. Jessica Snyder.
It's on, yeah. Hello, I'm Jessica Snyder. I'm from Wardaka Brewing Company. I wanted to start by saying it's actually really wonderful to look around this room and see so many friends and familiar faces. Agritourism is uniquely positioned to grow relationships. You have to work hard as a small business owner to find any opportunities you can to develop relationships. That's how you grow and succeed in your business. But agritourism is unique. We're touching so many different facets. We needed to hear about the transportation side. We need to hear about the marketing side and the Visit Montgomery side. We rely on the local agriculture. And the fact that we're here and we can look around the room, and I know all of us up here know so many people in this room and count them as friends and professional relationships, is a testament to the existing success. I know that we have work to do, ways to improve, but we should take a step back and be really proud of the fact that we are in a good spot. Montgomery is developing agritourism, and we've been able to build a lot of success on the relationships that we have from both public sector and private sector partnerships. With that said, I'm Jessica Snyder. I'm the third generation of Wardaka Brewing Company and Wardaka Farm. We are uniquely positioned. We are just outside of Laytonsville in Sunshine, if you roll deep in the county and you know where that is. But the 230-acre farm was put into land preservation over 10 years ago, and that's important to us. We're proud of that land stewardship. It did put the pressure on future generations, though, to bring something else to our existing equestrian operations, as Jane mentioned earlier. And we had a professional brewer in the family. We were able to repurpose an existing building, which was important because the farm being in preservation, there are tenants and some conservation requirements about building new buildings on land in preservation. So we added the farm brewery, and it's been a really good success. We were also involved in the agritourism study, but at the same time, we were also putting forth the zoning text amendment to change that language that had existed for so long to just define a winery, to expand that language, which has really opened up a lot of doors for some of the new on-farm alcohol businesses that we've seen since we've gotten started almost 8 years ago. Some of the things that I count among our most success is actually our opportunity to educate our consumers and to talk about and teach about land and preservation. Those are two really big things that set us apart and are unique. We do get a lot of new customers. We do get a lot of people that want to see horses. We get people that don't know anything about farms. They might just be looking for a Sunday drive. But when they come, we have a teachable moment to be able to tell them about horses, about equestrian opportunities that exist in the county, also about our farming partnerships and our farming relationships, how we grow ingredients, how we work with other farmers in the county to source other ingredients that we're using in our products. And we then, because they're outside, they get a chance to kind of see the land, and it becomes a little bit more personal to them. And the farm is old. It's been in the family since the late 1930s, and we have a lot of stories to tell, and anytime you can kind of connect with your consumer and tell a story, if they get in the car and they feel like they learned a little bit, right? That's the part of the agritourism is experience. It can be an educational experience. If they feel like they learned something, they learned about the grapes, they've learned about horses, they've learned about growing berries and the weather impacts and the seasonal impacts of the person that they just met, not only are they more likely to spend those dollars as a repeat customer, but maybe they'll spend those dollars at the farmer's market. Maybe they will keep their children's sports activities on a local level and keep them in the county riding or learning how to do something at one of our local recreation facilities. We've partnered with we've tried to grow our relationships professionally with the marketing side, but also with the agriculture side, and we're proud of that. I will say that Montgomery County, I think, has done a good job. I know on the brewery side, I don't know as much, and on the equestrian side, but I don't know as much on the winery side, Robert, so chime in. But we've done a good job of trying to stay in leadership positions on the state level. Wardaka was just had a representative as the chair of the Brewers Association of Maryland, and we've been able to keep there is a county brewery, Land Made, I think they have an at-large position. I'm not sure what they are, but they are on the board for the Brewers Association of Maryland next year, and that's important. It's important for us to try to make sure that our local ag tourism businesses are staying abreast and involved both on the local and state level as well. The challenges, I don't know that at this point I have anything new to say. The signage is real. Craig Zucker told me that, and then actually the Department of Transportation called me like 2 hours later, but they both said the same thing, which was there was no money until 2026, and so that I could get in line, that the money has been spent and that there really isn't anything, and that they're in another county, that they go by county to do these highway signs, and that Montgomery County isn't on the loop for another couple years. It's not a challenge, but I'm always looking for new opportunities and partnerships for marketing. And for me personally, we always look to get creative in the winter season. That's when we're always slow. I think a lot of agritourism business does see fluctuations based on the seasons. We are open year-round, but we do, at least I do see some fluctuations as the seasons change, and winter always is a slowdown for us, so we're always looking to get creative on our ideas there. But we are glad to be here, and I know I speak for all of us that if you have not been to our facilities, I'd like to invite all of you to come and learn about us, visit us. I know it's helpful sometimes to get a first-hand boots on the ground experience to help you kind of understand where we're coming from. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. I'm happy to report that I have spent a lot of money in your establishment, including during the winter with my husband. So you don't have any problems with me on that area. We're gonna start the questioning. We must finish at 11:30, so please keep the questions and answer, please brief. After we're done, we're gonna go to Brookville Beer Farm for lunch, and everybody's invited. My office will pay for the pizza. You all have to handle your own drinks. We're gonna start with council member Sales.
Thank you so much. It's so good to see this panel. I've been looking forward to this meeting because I've been to each of your establishments, and thankful for the pandemic because your spaces have provided such enjoyment for people who could not eat, drink, and be merry indoors. And so I just commend you for continuing to provide welcoming spaces and reinventing yourselves to ensure that you're accommodating all the different palates. I don't drink beer, but I love your sours. And so I love all of the different infusions, the popsicles during the summer, the cideries, for all of our people who have celiac. And so we are serving an industry and a population, and thankful for the support of marketing. Everyone does love to feature these beautiful spaces on Instagram. Please, whatever we can do to continue to support these efforts, please let us know. As we're definitely, thank you, yes. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez talked about the upcoming meeting that we're going to dive deeper into this report. I look forward to being a part of that conversation. I know at the state level, I think there was a 30% requirement for farmers to now supply any state contracts. And so if there's any opportunity that we can do with MCPS, Health and Human Services, to ensure that we are supplying our whether it's our restaurants, any county-owned facilities, to ensure that we are maximizing our contributions from our farmers. I look forward, hopefully we can have a joint session with HHS and the Planning, Housing, and Parks Department. I know that increasing overall knowledge and awareness of the ag-reserve for our students is so important. We just had, my Youth Advisory Council had the youth leader from the 4-Hers at a meeting last week, and we know that I'm glad to see the next generation of farmers here, but we have to continue to fill that pipeline. So any conversations that we can have with MCPS to facilitate those discussions, please keep us posted. Mr. Butts, I appreciate your raising the point about the diversity of the customer base that comes out to these areas. It's not what we would really envision when we look around the room, but we know that there's a diversity of folks that love experiences and love the products that you produce. And so I don't think I saw this in the report that was put forth. And so when you come back in the fall or in February to discuss the report, it would be good to hear about any of the diversity efforts for how we are, whether it's attracting or more that can be shared about the diversity of how communities of color can benefit, whether it's through workforce opportunities or just visiting these facilities. And I'd also like to find out more about how many food and wine events, food, wine, and spirit events that the Agricultural Reserve offers annually. I know that the farm tour and harvest sale was incredibly successful, and so any opportunities that we can see what went well, how those activities can be improved, and how we can continue to duplicate those in the upcoming season next year, and even throughout the holidays. I mean, I've seen the facilities. They have the outdoor warmers. We have teepees that, so there's so many beautiful spaces that are available year-round, and so we can start maximizing the year-round offerings at these facilities. That would be excellent. And just really grateful for our partners. Thank you so much for your intentionality and your creativity and all you do to keep us engaged and making Montgomery County even more attractive to people who don't live here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lutke.
Thank you. And to Councilmember Sales's point about different festivals and things that happen within the Ag Reserve, a lot of those are driven by individual producers, right? So Two-Story Chimney Cider Works did the cider festival, and I know you guys were at, and it was a great event. It was the first time ever. And, you know, they did their best to figure out how many tickets they could sell and would reasonably be able to accommodate with the parking issues and all of that. And the event sold out 4 days before the event happened. And so now it's on to the next year. Or I know you guys have the Barley Harvest Festival. And every time there is an event, no matter who sponsors it in the county, we tend to get feedback on where the road bumps were in getting the thing off the ground. And we also know, as has come up multiple times, the regulations are challenging at times. And sometimes they're put into effect because there was a problem to address at a particular point in time, but nobody goes back and looks at them again. It's not, from a policy-making perspective, the fun thing to do. It's a very nerdy thing to do, but it's a very necessary thing to do. And so for us to do that, whether it's here at the county or for us to press that issue with the state, and I am always happy to press issues with the state, we need you to tell us where those road bumps are so that we can dig them up. And I can go dig up the regulations, and I can go take a look at them, and I can go advocate on your behalf. That's really important, and it's critical for Maryland's economic development as a whole that we wrap our heads around that and do a better job. So that we make sure if we still have statutes or regulations on the books, they're the ones that we need for now, that make sense for now, and that we're not keeping things on the books that do not serve a purpose anymore. So please send them my way. I want my inbox to be full. And I really appreciate everything that you all surfaced here today, so thank you.
Balkin.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for doing what you do. I've been to most of your facilities. Jane and I have been corresponding just recently, so thank you. I've been in the community for 30 years, and Butler's has been a part of my family's history, and so I just can't thank you enough for that. And Windridge has become our unofficial location. We have a group that meets on a quarterly basis of community activists, and we meet at Windridge. We're not drinking in the afternoon, but we all leave with a bottle. So I just wanted to point that out. So thank you all. And Councilmember Lukey mentioned bumps in the road. So let's talk literal bumps in the road in terms of transportation. Just recently, the T&E, I sit on the Transportation Environment Committee, and we just went through the Rustic Roads Master Plan, updating the Rustic Roads Master Plan. So I know that there are issues not only in the Ag Reserve and preserving the history and the culture and the land, but also preserving the rustic roads and how challenging that can be for some of your facilities. Looking at, I was just at Butler's. I went the back way because I knew that the way I usually go on a Saturday in the fall would be difficult. So I think that that's a challenge that we just need to continue to look at from a transportation perspective. Parking, ingress, egress is an issue. So please make sure that you let my office know of issues that you're dealing with in that regard. I also, I'm surprised, I guess I shouldn't be surprised about the signage. Signage is always an issue for the private sector, and so I'm surprised at the at the wait time, and that there are potential solutions, and we need to wait on those. So let's bump that up and try to get to that. And then just from the perspective of the bus tour option, so we in the prior panel we talked about that. I would just like to very briefly, would that be helpful for you as in the private sector? Is that something that you can accommodate? Before we get too far down this path, what are your feelings about having a tour operator come to your facilities? Just very briefly, if we want to go down the line.
We love our charter buses. They don't love coming to us on the back roads like that. But I think we don't really have a bus stop nearby, public transportation nearby. We've got workers that would like to use that, so it is a challenge for our workforce. They can't get to work. But I think there is some benefit to having continue that conversation for sure. We are spoiled. We're in Germantown and we live really close to everything. But these other guys would benefit for sure.
As far as a tour bus option, not public transit, I think it's a great idea. We, along with other owners of the breweries in our area, kind of joked about it early on in COVID, but the economics behind that and the logistics behind it, for us to take it on personally, was just too much. But I think if there was a way for the county to integrate, and maybe with the tourism board, there's the farm tour, but give people certain days and times that they could expect to get a ride from place to place. And with that, then we could prepare special things like an educational opportunity with that tour, because we know that certain amount of people are coming at that time. So I think it's a great idea.
Actually, believe it or not, I think there's some opportunities there for the horse world also. The Maryland Horse Industry Board, which is part of the State Department of Agriculture, has a program called Horse Discovery Centers, where they certify certain existing horse facilities that have programs that are focused on introducing people to horses. They will bring people in and not necessarily even have them get on horses, but they'll talk to them about horses, they'll talk to them about caring for horses and grooming horses, and there are a lot of people that are actually very interested in doing that. There was a survey a few years ago that said that 51% of Maryland households contained at least one horse enthusiast. And most of those people don't own horses. So I think there would be an opportunity to have some kind of, passenger van, bring small groups of people into these horse discovery centers that otherwise wouldn't have a way to get there, then they can have those experiences.
So for us, we're sort of more reservation only, and we're not that well set up to handle larger groups. So the tour thing is not exactly probably the best fit for us, but generally industry-wide, I think it's a great fit.
We love our tour buses that come to the brewery. We actually kind of have missed them because that's dropped off a lot since COVID, but it's starting to come back. I think that's really great. It checks a lot of boxes. It lessens your impact on your parking. It also provides a sober driver. There's a lot of benefits to having groups like that. And I love what Jane was just saying about the horse discovery centers. I think that that's really true. Do you think that the field trips will kind of come back to the agritourism destinations, Bella Vita or Butler's? I know that that's been really difficult, which is how expensive it is. But certainly when you talk about buses, are there opportunities for the county buses, schools to visit some of our...
It hasn't started yet, the school field trips? I thought they had. Yeah,
Come back.
They did, okay.
But they didn't come back like they used to be, but they're definitely back, which is good. But the point you made was that it's getting expensive, and the budget to go to your family farm is difficult for these schools. So definitely address that.
Yeah, I heard somebody say that it costs like $27 to send a kid to the pumpkin patch, but a family could go and buy an $8 pumpkin, and it's kind of like there's a really big disconnect there. Yeah. But I love the tour bus ideas.
Perfect. As they were talking, I was thinking, how am I going to get a bus from Wheaton all the way to Ag Reserve? So I will definitely follow up on this. Council Vice President Friedson, can you please hang him? Thank you.
I'm feeling all the way out on my own here. Yeah. So first of all, thank you. My comments here are mostly just thank you for everything that each of you do, everything that your families have done. Most of your businesses would have been impossible to start today, which I think is an important point that we need to raise too, that if you look at the land costs and you look at the dynamics, the challenge is just to stay in business. The pride that each of you have in being a second or a third generation farm-based business and farm family in Montgomery County is a great source of pride for all of us. It should be a great source of pride for you and for your families. I know there are people who are looking down and very proud of what you built and the creativity that you have brought. I think they'd be stunned at what their farm looks like today in many cases, in some cases in a good way. But I think it's an inflection point for us to look inward and really realize that the model is very challenging. And Mr. Butts raised it well. You know, each individual aspect of the business doesn't really work on its own. It's creating an ecosystem where you can plug enough pieces together to make it functional and make it profitable and make sure that you can raise a family off of it and hire employees out of it. And so I just wanted to note that. I think there's a double-edged sword to the second, third, fourth generation businesses that we're so proud to have, that if you wanted to start, you know, if the 1950 butlers come into town today to start a business, the math just doesn't really work. And how do we make sure that we're attracting in 2023 and 2024 and 2025 the incredible families who have given so much to our county, have been such a great source of not only economic but quality of life for our community moving forward. And that's what I think should keep us all up at night a little bit and should really be the focus. But thank you. I have visited and patronized. I've been proud to spur the local ag economy. I'll continue to do that. I will say I'm glad that the transportation as a safety issue, not just an economic development issue, is important for many of these businesses, and I think it's something that we should really think about. It's part of the urgency, I think, of having a public role in this, of helping to support private businesses and doing things that are safe. And my one question is, there are a lot of challenges that you all face, and you talked about it, having to have, 9, 10, 11, 12 different certifications and licenses, and just to run a successful family business. Most businesses need one of those or two of those. You need, a dozen of those. But if we could do one thing, if we could come out of this meeting with one takeaway for you of what would make it easier for your families to run your business, to be successful, to pass it on to the next generation, what would that one thing be?
Whoa, okay. I would say the one thing would be that you're looking at the county, to have one person in the county, and we have the Office of Agriculture, but to have one person in the county that understands agritourism, agriculture, and can help us navigate the regulations, the permitting, because we are different. And we don't fit into boxes that you guys have. And it is so hard to try to fit in those boxes. But when we finally get to the help we need, it actually, you guys were very helpful. But it took a while because the answer was no for a long time in many things. So my advice would be, let's get somebody who can somehow understand all of the facets of our business, and then let's have a voice in the county.
I'm going to follow up on that exact point. So stand by on that, but it's a great suggestion and something that I've thought a little bit about.
I guess I would agree with Tyler. Coming in at first, trying to start a business, just going into COVID, we didn't know that was coming. We were really fortunate to have the ag office just right down the street from us to give us guidance, but it was still a confusing situation because you have many different entities. You have DPS, Park and Planning, the Agricultural Office, Soil Conservation District. I mean, the list goes on, and it's how not to get pinballed through the rigmarole, and then of course the county council is part of that as well, and the executive. I mean, he has a lot of things he wants to get done too. So just having some point of contact at the government level that can assist people that have not inherited or aren't already operating but want to get started, I think that's a good place to start.
I think Mike Scheffel and before him Jeremy Chris did a really pretty good job of that, although it still is a very complicated process, and they only have certain jurisdictions, and then you have to deal with DPS and that sort of thing. I know that at the state level, this past session, the General Assembly passed a law creating an agritourism, well, it started out being ombudsperson, and then they changed it to ag tourism specialist or something like that. But it's one person within MDA that is supposed to help new businesses navigate all of those different hoops. So perhaps a position like that at the county level might be useful as well.
Excuse me, Tyler hit the nail on the head, right? And I know, Ms. Gonzalez, you remember, if it were not for people like you, my project would not have happened, right? Yeah, so. Just one second briefly about sort of profitability, small agricultural business. I'm going to take a slightly more positive view and say that it is absolutely possible for somebody to come in here and put a stake in the ground. It is not easy, but I really believe that if we keep working at it, it's totally possible. We should hope that it's possible for new people to come in here and make a viable agricultural business, yeah.
Yeah. To say something that there's levels to agriculture, and Robert touched on it. The commodity farmers who have been doing this for a long time and control much of the farmland, they're not sure how to feel about these agritourism operations. Are we friends? Are we foes? Are we bringing traffic into their side of the county? Are we helping them at all, hurting them at all? So I think rather than developing two forms of economic agriculture where it's either you're picking your own or you're driving a combine, there is a bridge that could be found there. And if we could tether, I mean, it may be legislatively or just marketing-wise or even potential grant opportunities. I don't know how you would handle it, but bridging the gap between the commodity farmers and the agritourism businesses. If we could have local farmers growing the barley that is then malted regionally or locally and then made into beer, which is sold at a high premium on our operation, that would be a great opportunity, I think, for other farmers to get involved without having to have the parking lot issues and the traffic issues. They can take their existing infrastructure, their existing land, and then benefit on what we're already doing. So instead of having 40 or 50 farm breweries in Montgomery County, which isn't sustainable, it will hit a tipping point, we can have 40 or 50 farmers growing grain for the 10 or 15 breweries that may come about. So that's what I would say there, is trying to bridge that gap is super important.
I concur. I think everybody's made lovely points, and I agree with what Chris just said.
Is this on? Okay, I appreciate it. So one of the things that I have thought about, I'm glad you raised it, the state bill. The county put forward several years ago a business navigator to support small businesses to help manage through the different areas. And one of the things about thinking about of whether or not a agritourism or navigator could be an ombudsperson, but really is more of a connector and a facilitator and a handholder, or something that will follow up with the Office of Agriculture, because I think having it within, yeah. Sure.
So in my opinion, the challenge isn't that we, the Office of Ag or our Soil Conservation District or University of Maryland doesn't know where to point you guys. It's that when we point you to them, the regulations in and of themselves are the challenge. I know where to send you guys. That's not the hard part. The hard part is getting past the regulations.
Coming tomorrow on overnight states. I'm just gonna say that's all.
Particularly on the zoning side of it, in our other committee, an area that I am looking to get thoughts and advice from you all and from colleagues to say what are some zoning challenges that exist. Some of them are permitting, some of them are about building that relate to zoning, some of them are beyond zoning, but let's talk about them. Some will be this committee's jurisdiction, some of which are zoning jurisdiction, but happy to follow up on that, and I'll yield back and just end how I started and say thank you. It is not easy to run the businesses that you run, and we are very grateful, and it's a big part of what makes Montgomery County such a great place, where you can be 20 minutes from the District of Columbia and 20 minutes from a number of farm-based businesses. There are very few places on earth that have that, and we have that, and it's because of you, and we are very grateful. So thank you.
Love it. For the joint committee session that we're going to have with Economic Development and PHP in the winter, February, I'm going to ask Mr. Butler from the Planning Department to, as you work on that update of the study, make sure that you identify land use zoning changes that we should consider and be very specific as much as you can, just to help us guide the conversation. Cool. We have 10 minutes, so Councilmember Sales.
I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the Town of Poolesville Commissioner, Mr. Jim Brown here. And if we're talking about agritourism and agribusiness and economic development and transportation, I'm glad that we have our state partners here because we need help facilitating the reopening of White's Ferry. And so our state partners are aware. Our delegate, David Frazier Hidalgo, has been working closely with us, and we hope that we can continue to open those lines of communication and really raise the importance of this transportation network that's really hurting the small businesses that are neighboring in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sales. That's critical for the Western County. So I just wanted to talk about the Ombudsman, the Navigator. Jake Weissman was here earlier from, oh, he is, Jake. You know, I never miss an opportunity to say how great the Business Resource Center is, the Business Center. We do have small business navigators or resource people to help move that along. It's relatively new and getting staffed up. And when it's hard to believe that it's almost been a full year for this new council. And one of the things that this committee talked about very early on is the culture of yes, and making sure that all the departments in the county, when interacting with business, the response is, how can we help make that happen? And so if that isn't happening, we, the council, need to know that because, Dale Tibbetts is here from the county executive's office. The county executive is committed to making this cultural shift in the county, that we are from the government and we are here to help. So let's just make sure that happens. And if it doesn't, please call me or anybody on this panel. So thank you.
Excellent. On December 4th, we're going to have a committee session with DPS. And the whole point of that session is on streamlining with a focus on the restaurant sector. I'm going to make sure that DPS knows that this conversation has happened, and perhaps they can also start addressing this issue on December 4th. So keep that in mind. With that, I am very excited to be here today and see you all. I think we had a really great conversation. We even had a baby here. Where did it go? We had a baby in the back. I love that. As I said before, we're going to go to Brookville Beer Farm after this, and you're all invited to continue having the conversation one-on-one, networking with us before some of us had to go back to session in Rockville. Stay tuned also for the winter session that we mentioned before. With that, we are adjourned.